Welcome to the V. Lenore Show. Here, we will discuss lifestyle, beauty, celebrity gossip, and current events in our own way, my way, V style. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Hi, everybody. How's everybody doing today? Welcome to the V. Lenore Show. I'm your host, V. Lenore. Glad to see so many people. We're waiting in the chat, ready to go. Today, we are broadcasting to 3 platforms. We are broadcasting on Facebook, YouTube, obviously, and LinkedIn. But let me tell you guys, those that are on Facebook and LinkedIn, the party really happens over here on YouTube. So all you have to do is come over to YouTube and search for V. Lenore, okay? And you'll find us, I'm sure. So today, guys, we have such a special guest. I'm so excited. And then, this morning I had to ask myself, what were you thinking? Because today we have Black media royalty in the house. How am I going to interview the master interviewer? I'm going to try. Hopefully he will be gracious. Okay. He was gracious enough to come to my little platform, and I'm so happy he's here. I think he's got plenty of jewels to share. He has decades of experience in journalism as a broadcaster. He is an author. He is also the recipient of an Emmy Award as well as NAACP awards. And I'm just ecstatic to have him here. So without further ado, let me bring on Mr. Ed Gordon. Hi, Ed. How are you?
Doing well. That's a lot of pressure to live up to, but I'm doing well.
Who are you telling? I'm the one that has to live up to pressure of being in your presence today, asking you questions. That's crazy. That's crazy. I said to myself, what were you thinking? Well, I wanted to ask you first and foremost, let's talk about journalism in general. But before we do that, when did you know that you wanted to be a journalist? Was this the path you were always set to be on?
No, I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. I used to watch all the law shows on television. I guess when I was a kid, I watched Perry Mason and LA Law and all those things. And it was exciting to see people in the courtroom, and the lawyer tears you down at the end and gets you to confess. And then I went to college, and one of my communications professors said, hey, have you ever thought about making this a career? Mm-hmm. And I said, no, not really. He says, well, you're pretty good at this. You should give it a try. And so I graduated. I didn't have a job. I had taken the LSAT and was waiting on those results. And then just got caught up in doing nothing for like a year. Mm-hmm. And I told a buddy of mine, our job was to get up and throw the baseball in front of his mama's house. We did that like it was really a job. We got up religiously to do that. And I told him one day, if we don't stop this, we're going to do this when we're 50. And so I got an internship at the PBS affiliate in Detroit, where I'm from. My brother's old girlfriend, who was no longer talking to him, but she still liked me. She worked there, and she got me in, and my journey started from that point on. Never looked back.
So when you went to work for your first gig, was it actual reporter position, or were you an assistant, production assistant? What was it?
I was literally a volunteer at first.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I didn't even have a position. But I went every day. Wasn't getting paid, but I just wanted to get my foot in the door, learn the business. It's a lot different than it is today, with your phone being your entry into whatever you may want to try to do. Mm-hmm. But I stayed. They saw how dedicated I was, and they hired me as a production assistant, which is, entry level job. I was a kind of glorified gopher, but I was so happy to get in. I mean, I dressed in suits every day. I was, really, really determined to make this work. And so that was the first job. And then I convinced them, after I was promoted to associate producer, I convinced them to let me produce a piece. I'd never produced anything. And then I convinced them to let me be the reporter for the piece. And they were a little leery about that, but they said, well, look, you can try it. And if it's really bad, but the piece is good, we'll re-record the ins and outs by our reporter, and we'll go from there. And then serendipity stepped in again. The anchor of the show, so they let me produce it. That it was decent enough. It was horrible, but it was decent enough. And
it's horrible probably now to you. It probably wasn't that bad.
It was bad enough, but they saw something in me, right? And so they were going to let me on the set and introduce the piece that night. And the anchor of the show didn't show up that night.
What?
And so I had to anchor the show, and it, been running ever since.
Wow. Okay, so you anchored that night, and then what ended up happening? Did you end up getting like a actual reporter position?
I ended up taking over the show. He
left. The anchor role? Oh,
yeah.
Wow. So he or she didn't just come for one night. They didn't come back.
Well, after we found out he had a little nose candy problem.
Oh, gotcha.
And they released him. Gotcha. But it really was the start, for me. And I didn't take a traditional route. Like a lot of times when you're a reporter, you start in a small market and you go. But this was, a show in Detroit. Now, the good thing, it was PBS. So it wasn't as competitive as a network affiliate would be. But it really was a great learning lesson for me.
When did you know that you had made it, Ed Gordon? First time I saw you, you were on BET. That was the first time I was introduced to who you were, and probably a lot of people. When did you feel like, okay, I've done it?
Well, make it is relative, right? So the first time I thought I made it, I was on the local cover of the Detroit version of TV Guide.
Yeah.
And that was when I was hosting that show. So at some point I had made it to that level. Then of course you go to BET, and there were a couple of kind of stair steps for that. And then, but it's all, when you're in it, when you're in the middle of it, I think you don't always see it. Right. So I don't ever think I really sat back and said, yeah, I made it. I made it. Because you're just in the middle of it. Right. You're running. So.
But Mr. Gordon, you have interviewed presidents, athletes, superstars, everything. Certainly one of those interviews stood out to you the most, that made you say, okay, if I landed this interview, then obviously when you're interviewing the president of the United States, and you haven't just interviewed one president, you've interviewed more than one.
Right. But again, all that's relative. So if you say to me, which was the interview that brought you the most fame, it would be the O.J. Simpson interview. If you were to say, who were you most excited by meeting, it would be Nelson Mandela. If you say to me, which interview is talked about to this day more than any other, it would be the Tupac interview.
Oh, the Tupac, yes. And you did R. Kelly.
R. Kelly, yeah. So, but the list I've been very blessed, right? I've been very blessed. So the list kind of goes on and on for me. But again, in the moment, even something as big as OJ, where literally the world was watching and reporting on it. And, that was one of those things where it was the first time I checked in a hotel under a pseudonym because people were looking for us and we had helicopters. We sent a fake car out because the helicopters and a decoy, because people were trying to find out where we were going to interview him that night. So it was, one of those things that you live. And again, I've had a blessed career, but I tell people, it didn't come without hard work and a lot of people helping me, a lot of people believing in me and giving me opportunity. And so I always tell folks, what you owe is being ready for your opportunity, because, you never know when the quote unquote big opportunity is coming. But look, it's all just your life. People think I'm really serious and think I was 2 votes away from class clown in high school. I'm not serious. I'm not serious at all, not even a little bit. But you can't convince people of that because of the way my TV persona was. But I also knew as a black man in a day where, like, now we see more black faces in front of the camera. But
Right.
when I started, you didn't see a lot of that. And so I knew that I had to position myself in a way
Mm-hmm.
that not just the people watching, but the people I
Mm-hmm.
was sitting across from were going to take me
Mm-hmm.
serious. So
Yeah.
there was a lot that went with that.
Who was your inspiration once you decide, okay, I am going to take this journey, in journalism? Who did you have as an idol, or if for lack of
Yeah,
a better word?
that's a fair word. I think we all have those. I remember, it started, and again, different time. There were people. We had a couple of really great people here in Detroit, even as a kid, before I knew this is what I wanted to do, that I watched locally.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then nationally, I always admired Bryant Gumbel and Ed Bradley.
Mm-hmm.
Bernie Shaw was another one. I was very lucky to work at the networks when Bryant was at NBC and Ed was at CBS, and they both, were very kind to me.
Nice.
You know, gave me advice, took me under their wing, um, and kind of saw again something in me, and I was always very appreciative of that. But I think of people like even Carol Simpson, who did the ABC Weekend News. There are just so many people you look to. And just like I'd listen, I'm friends with a lot of singers over the years because I can't sing a lick, but I love music and, always admire them. And many of them talk about
Yeah.
who they emulated in the beginning.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
I remember people saying, yeah, well, I did a better Ray Charles than Ray Charles because that was their ear and there. And I probably did a better Bryant Gumbel, in the beginning than he did. And so I probably patterned myself after him first and foremost. But I stole from anybody. I watched Dan Rather as a kid. And, I remember even being so little and Walter Cronkite was on. And, even before, again, I wanted to do that. I knew who these people were. So.
Mm-hmm. It's funny because you would think, though, with there being it could work either way. With there being so few black faces in front of the camera, especially at that time, instead of these people looking at you as competition, the fact that they embraced you, was that surprising
Look,
at all?
no, because listen, while they gave me advice, it's a very competitive industry, particularly back then when you didn't have the outlets you have now.
Mm-hmm.
So I also knew they were only going to do so much, right? I mean, to be honest, and I don't blame them. But it was pinch me moments often. Like if I was sitting in Brian's office and talking to him, or sitting in Ed Bradley's office and talking to him, or I remember one day Ed called me and there was a public service announcement they wanted him to do about jazz music. And he called me and said, hey, I want you to do this with me. There were those kinds of moments.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, for the most part, I don't have tales where somebody was trying to sabotage you, or you thinking you're the new kid on the block and all. So that was cool.
So who was your most difficult interview?
Again, that's relative. So difficult. It's always difficult to me to talk to people who've lost loved ones. And, I'm always conscious of, you don't want to say, so how you feeling? Well, how you think. So, but honestly, the person who comes to mind immediately is Eartha Kitt. And young people won't necessarily know who she is, but Eartha Kitt was a very famous entertainer, in the 40s, 50s, and the 60s, or probably 40s, 50s, and 60s. She was the first black Catwoman on the TV show, and I did a show at BET called Personal Diary, and we talked about people's lives. And I remember her coming in, and we were talking about her family, and I asked about her father. And she said, I didn't have a father. She's very dramatic.
Mm-hmm.
I said, and she wasn't very forthcoming in the very beginning of the interview anyway. You can get the energy from people across from you.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, respectfully, Miss Kitt, we all had fathers or we wouldn't be here. Now, maybe you didn't have a good interview or a relationship with your dad, but you had a father. And I made it my mission that day to win her over somehow. And not, she didn't have to like me, but she was going to give me a good interview. That was my mission. And by the time she was through, she was, and people may remember her from Boomerang, the movie.
That's what I was going to say. Most people, probably the folks in this chat, know my kiss. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So by the time she was done, I felt like Marcus. I was like, okay, okay. Yeah. Maybe we won her over a little bit too much. But
well, that's how you won her over then.
Yeah, I won her over by the time it was over. But you know, one of the difficult interviews, and it was a learning lesson for me very early on when America was embroiled in trying to end apartheid in South Africa. I had been following it as a host and thought I knew a lot. And we had this man come on from South Africa. He was originally from South Africa. And I didn't do my homework like I should have because I thought, oh, I've been following this. I got it, you know, got a little lazy. And when I was talking to him, you know, he wasn't just somebody in America who'd been protesting at the embassy. I mean, he was someone who lived apartheid. And it was painfully obvious I didn't really know what I was talking about. And that was a great lesson for me, though. And this was early on in my career, but I vowed then I'll never do that again. And I, from that day on, always knew my topic. So, you know, it's a bad night, but it was a great lesson.
Okay. And that's important to get that lesson. And that's what makes you the great interviewer that you are because of that lesson.
I don't know about that, but
you are. No, look, if you have interviewed Mandela, the presidents, OJ, and you got the exclusive with OJ. He hadn't met with anybody else, sat down with anyone else. He was only going to sit down with you. I remember that.
He had not. And yeah, I was friends with Johnny Cochran. And I remember I was in Johnny's office the day he got the call to join the team.
Oh, wow.
And when I sat in the office, he said to me, he said, Ed, I may have to ask you to excuse yourself. I'm expecting a call. And I said, okay, no problem. We were talking. And so the call came in and I excused myself and I came back in and he said, let me ask you something. He said, that was OJ Simpson and his team, and they want me to join the squad. What do you think? And I said, well, he said, I'm leery. We're not friends, but we're acquaintances. And I try not to involve myself with friends in legal matters. What do you think? I said, well, dude, if I ever call you and I'm in trouble, I want you to throw that friendship crap out the window. I need you to just find me and take care of it. But
right.
Yeah, but you know, people forget though that we were in the running like everybody else. And I remember being at Johnny's office another time and everybody was sending him different things to try to woo him to win over the interview. And Diane Sawyer had sent flowers, Katie Couric sent a cake and just all different. And I remember the week before I was in his office and he liked this tie I had on. And so I went to the store and bought the tie again.
Oh, wow.
And gave him the tie. And I said, Johnny, I was up in this joint and I see everybody's wooing you, man. So here you go. But he said, well, Ed, here's what I will promise you. I will tell OJ, I think he should sit down with you. But OJ makes his own decisions and we can't sway him at the end. I said, that's all I can ask. OJ originally picked NBC and they were going to have multiple people sit with him, multiple anchors and reporters. And then he found out later that it looked as though they were trying to get gotcha moments with him. And so he backed out and picked us. And, you know, that was a great turning point for me. But as I said earlier, that was one of those things where literally the whole world is watching.
Do you know that in retrospect, that's probably one of the blackest things that OJ has done was sitting with you? You know, once he made it big. And since that situation, I'm just saying, but that's me. See, and that's why I'm a blogger versus a journalist. So let's talk about that for a second. So I want to talk about this idea that, you know, now we're in a social media driven society. A lot of people don't even like to sit and watch anything for a long period of time anymore. What do you think about the fact that there are so many bloggers that have been born because of social media? And do you see any value in it? You being a journalist, a trained journalist, how do you see this relationship?
So I think that, the terms, even from blogger to influencer, has changed.
Yeah.
So it went from journalist to journalist and bloggers. And to be a blogger, you had to have a website. There was some writing that was involved. There was, now it's gone to influencer or just anyone who has a social media platform. So an IG page, and people are just out here talking. There's a part of that that's good in that you don't have to have a big network behind you. There are many smart people who never got on the air when it was just television, who were smarter often than the people who had shows, more talented, etc. So media has changed tremendously.
Yeah.
But the lines between an influencer, blogger, and journalist have been blurred. And I remind people there's a huge difference. There's a huge difference. So I'm not a snob, and I'm not one of those who says, "Oh, you should never have a blogger." I'm saying though that the consumer should be smart enough to know who they're listening to.
Okay.
And the difference between an interview that a journalist will do and an interview that just somebody who has, 1 million followers but no training will do. What you see now a lot of times is people will interview people that they're friendly with. I look at a lot of documentaries. I see a lot of documentaries that are made by the person who the documentary is about. Yep. Well, how truthful is that really going to be?
Yeah, you can't be objective about yourself. Not really.
You can even get into certain things that you don't want to talk about or you're a little bit embarrassed about, but how truthful are you really going to be in that? And so I think that society has changed too. Right? Facts aren't as important. You don't have to source things. You can just say, I heard, and people run with it. How many times have we seen people running with something that just hit somebody's website or IG page or Twitter, and people run with it as if it's the truth? We've killed people who hadn't died,
Yes.
Forced folks who are still together. It's a lot of that. And so I think consumers have to be smarter and just say, I'm not going to take it just for face value because it's up here. And I think the more popular you get as someone who has a social media platform, and this could be a kid down the street, or it could be somebody with 20 million followers, I think you have to understand your responsibility. And their responsibility, not just to throw things out. I always laugh at people who put songs up and say, I don't own the rights to this song. As if somebody wants to come after you legally, that's going to save you, but it won't, right? But I also look at the world today, and the world today is not the world of the 1970s or 80s. So the world changes, sometimes for better, sometimes not. And I think that we're at a point where we're at the not. And we need to kind of pull back a little bit. Everybody, so take the Oscar slap as a for instance.
That's on my list to ask you about. That's on my list.
Never said anything publicly. I'm happy to answer your questions, but I didn't put a commentary up. Because I felt like, we don't have to hear from everybody. I don't really need to hear from you. You can tell me what you thought about the instance, but don't tell me what Chris is feeling. Or don't tell me about what Will is feeling, or even what Jada thinks, because you don't.
Right.
But everybody, and then here's the famous line. Well, so many of you have asked me to talk about it. No, what that means is I want to talk about it, but I don't want to seem egotistical. So I say, so many people, please, that ain't true either. Right? You want to talk about it because you want to talk about it.
Yeah.
So I just think that we need to be careful and understand the power of words. People are like, Elon Musk is buying Twitter and Black Twitter is angry. Well, what is Black Twitter? That's Black folk on Twitter. We don't own it. We act as though Black Twitter is something by itself, right? It's not. Right. It's a folk on Twitter. We gave a
Basically.
nickname to it.
Yeah.
And we can't control who owns it. Now, if you want to get Black Twitter, then go create Black Twitter. But until then, you got to deal with who owns it and how they own it and operate it. And you can't be mad if somebody you don't like buys it.
Right.
You know, we have to start to understand the power dynamic too.
Let me ask you this. So are you familiar with the Cardi B, Tasha K case?
No.
You're not at all?
Not at all.
Okay. So I'll give you an overview, quick overview. So there's a blogger. Are you familiar? And I don't expect you to be familiar with this blogger, but you might. Have you heard of Tasha K before?
No, I'm 61 years old, child.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Because here's the deal. I mean, explain it, but here's why I say it does matter.
Okay.
So many people, particularly over 50, want to act like they're down and they know everything. There's some stuff I ain't interested in at all. At all. And some of the things we elevate to importance aren't important at all. Right? And the things that we get all caught up in, I'm like, really? I don't care about the Kardashians. I don't care. And when I say I don't care about them, I don't care about the idea that we've been fooled enough to watch a marketing machine and believe that all this crap is real. Some of it is, some of it isn't. But at the end of the day, do we really care? Do we really care? Now go ahead and explain it, and I'll see if I can jump on it.
Right.
I know about Meg Thee Stallion, though. I know she got bullet fragments in her feet. I got that one, but tell me about this one.
Ooh, that's a whole nother one. Well, so the Tasha K situation. Tasha K is a blogger here on YouTube, and she has 1 million followers. But she, on the road to getting 1 million followers, she came across this story about Cardi B. And she invited a guest onto her platform that basically told a lot of stories that weren't true. And Tasha K took those stories without checking them fully, and then repeated that narrative over and over on her channel. That riled up Cardi B, and eventually they bumped heads. And the blogger, continued to tell stories that were not accurate. There was just a recent lawsuit where Cardi B actually sued her. This was 4 years in the making, and Cardi B won $4 million, as a matter of fact, in the 3.8 million. Now, I bring that up because you sort of touched on it. You know, a lot of bloggers, the main thing I see as a difference between journalists and bloggers is that bloggers are here to give their opinions on things, and journalists are supposed to be rooted in researching the facts specifically. And honestly, I think, you know, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Barbara Walters, people of that era did not really tell their opinion when they were giving us the news about things. Whereas bloggers are doing that. And now the lines seem to be blurred.
The lines are blurred. And look, let's be honest. You always have your opinion, rooted in what you produce. Sometimes you have to fight against that. So the days of Barbara Walters and Walter Cronkite and all those good folks in the heyday of 60 Minutes, they were great journalists. There were sometimes they had to fight against their opinions. Sometimes their opinions crept in, not necessarily by them saying something, but how they produced the piece, right? What they put in, what they left out, all of those things. That's always been there. But as a journalist, you were really taught to try to be as unbiased as possible. What the young lady did that you just mentioned is what I talked about just a few moments ago, that you have to have a responsibility of what you're doing and what you, owe to your audience and the person you're sitting across from, right? But here's the reality. The lines haven't just blurred from the idea of bloggers or influencers not necessarily knowing journalistic standards. The lines have blurred because people we call journalists or are trained in journalism or are journalists have changed. And now if you are on primetime cable, you spend an hour giving me your opinion. And then you cloak it in being a journalist because you'll do one or two interviews that don't go left or right. But the truth of the matter is objectivity, and I put that in quotes because, again, it was never fully objective, really isn't quite as important because we're just talking to people who believe what we believe. And these are smart people and trained otherwise, but it's not what this era is about. This era is about you as a journalist, getting as many likes as you can for your show. Yeah. So back in the day, we were taught you don't want to be a part of the story. Today's journalists, if they can get 1 million likes or go viral or whatever, they're happy to be a part of the story. And some of them are just happy to be a part of the story, period. Different day.
Well, okay, so I want to come back for this next segment. It's only 3 minutes. We're going to play a quick game. And it's my little tribute to James Lipton from Inside the Actor Studio. So I want to ask you the 10 questions real quick, okay? But we'll do that right after this message. All right, so we're back.
All right, y'all send us some money. Those were very impressive graphics and a kiss at the end. Y'all send her that money, please.
Thank you. All right, so let's ask the 10 questions that Mr. James Lipton used to ask from Inside the Actor Studio. Those of you that are in the chat, you may or may not be familiar with this show. Mr. Lipton has passed on, but his questions live forever. And I used to love this segment of his interviews because I thought that even though he'd sit with people for an hour and a half, this was probably the most telling, these 2 minutes, if you will. So my first question for you, Ed, is what is your favorite word?
Probably possible.
Possible. I love that. Okay, possible. All right. Very optimistic. What's your least favorite word?
Impossible.
Okay, makes sense. What turns you on?
Music.
What turns you off?
Bullshit.
What noise or sound do you love most? I think you kind of answered it, but
yeah. I mean, I honestly love music. So, and any kind, I can find any genre that I love.
Okay. All right. What sound do you hate?
People cracking their knuckles.
Ooh. Okay.
I always hate that. Always.
Yeah. It's a little freaky to me when it happens. What's your favorite curse word?
Probably shit.
Okay.
A good motherfucker every now and then is good to do well.
Okay. What profession? Well, you already said this, I think. I was going to ask you what profession other than the one that you have would you have tried? But it sounds like an attorney, is it?
Right.
Okay. What about what's a profession you know you would never like to do?
Doctor, surgeon.
Really?
Yeah. Not trying to cut anybody open.
Yeah. All right. And if heaven, well, let me rephrase that. Because I know heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you get to the pearly gates?
You done your best.
And that's all that's necessary, right? All right. Perfect. Okay. So here's my last little segment. I want to ask you a couple of hot topics where news is concerned and entertainment. First and foremost, I guess you've covered, like I said, multiple presidencies. You've you've been working as a broadcaster while we had our first Black president. Now we have our first female vice president, who is also our first Black female vice president. But do you think have we really advanced much? And do you think that we've advanced as much as that those positions may make us think we have, or others like to perceive that we've advanced?
Well, certainly we've advanced, right? I mean, I can even go back to before President Obama was elected. I sat across from him a week before he announced he was running, doing an interview with him, and the speculation was there that he was going to run. And I remember thinking in my head, yeah, dude, whatever, you ain't going to win. So the fact that he believed it and overcame it and won twice does say that we've come a long way. I mean, I thought without question, if you had said to me 20 years ago, what won't you see in your lifetime? I would have absolutely said a Black president with no hesitation. And so for those who think we haven't come a long way, that's just because they didn't live in, as I didn't. I grew up, I was born in 1960. So during the height of the civil rights movement, I was a little boy. I didn't live in a segregated city in the sense of Black side of town, white side of town. Now, prejudice was still very much the case in Detroit and all of those things. I remember hearing my parents talking about certain things, but I didn't know the prejudice that the generation before me knew. Mm-hmm. And so my kids didn't know the prejudice that I walked into. Mm-hmm. So the country has gotten better, yet we are seeing regression. And part of that regression, though, comes from the fact that we were making gains. Mm. And those people who had all the gold didn't want to give it up. Even those, here's the irony, even those who had little or nothing knew that they were better off than most Black folk. Mm-hmm. Now, when that started to even out, then it becomes a problem. And now we see the march on the Capitol. Now we see the election of Donald Trump. Now we see all of the things that we're seeing. And so I remind people, it's not enough just to complain about it, like something on social media, buy a t-shirt. There is a lot that has to be done. I looked at all of the people who were elated by Ketanji Brown Jackson's Supreme Court appointment and it getting through the Senate confirmation hearings. But then I remind them that if you don't vote, that may never happen again.
Absolutely.
In a while. So you've got to connect the dots. Mm-hmm. And that's what I hope we start to do a little better than we've done.
Okay. We're in the middle of, well, we aren't necessarily in the war, but how does this war, this Ukraine and Russia war, impact not just the United States, but Black people? I've heard Black people say, well, that has nothing to do with us. And why are we going over there to help them? And we've got people right here in our country, and they don't understand the relationship of why it is that we have to pay attention to what's happening. What do you say about that?
Well, then I just say that you're not connecting the dots, as I said before. So beyond the obvious of gas prices higher and everything that changes because dots connect for war, the idea that, in fact, if you do have someone like Putin in charge, and I'm not one of those people who don't believe that you can't look at America and say some of the same things in terms of, well, how could you do that? Or look at what you're doing to people and blah, blah. You know, too often America believes that we're so far above this stuff, and we're not. Our leaders have been corrupt, started wars, other things like that. So let's be honest about that. But I also understand the dynamic of the tightrope that leaders walk, because if you do just go in and try to bomb them out, then you do have the potential of two superpowers in a World War III, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, there's something to be said about the idea of things need to be done here in America. But when you talk about the atrocities that we're seeing now, to not lend support, and you're not sending troops over yet, you don't have boots on the ground, would be hellacious too. So it's a tremendous dilemma. But again, I think in order for you really to demand certain things, you've got to play the game. And I think it's fair for African Americans to say, look, Joe Biden, we literally put you in office. And these are our expectations, but we don't demand that of our leadership who finds their way to the White House for, a picnic to celebrate certain things at the Christmas party, or to, take a photo op because it looks good on their IG page. But we also don't demand of ourselves to say to elected leadership and non-elected leadership that these are our expectations. And until then, all you're doing is making noise.
Okay, let me ask you about R. Kelly. So with the recent conviction of R. Kelly, now he's looking at another trial coming up here pretty soon. What do you say about all of this that's happening? And do you think he has a chance of getting out of any of this at this point, considering Bill Cosby was able to get things reversed?
Well, slightly different, but I do not see R. Kelly getting a reprieve anytime soon.
Yeah.
What can you say about it, right? I think that it's a tremendous loss of someone who was supremely talented, but who was supremely sick. And so I think that he played a game that he got away with for a long time. I understand he still contends he did nothing wrong, but I think most of what we have seen would counter that. I think we as a community had our eyes closed for a long time to what he was doing. There were whispers. We all knew about it, talked about it in the barbershop and beauty shops. Many people protested him until Chocolate Factory came out. They were like, I ain't buying no more R. Kelly, and then Step in the Name of Love. And they were like, oh, that's the jam, though. Right?
Dio has a whole joke about that. He was like, he was done with him too till that album. That's
right. And so I think that sometimes you have to ask yourself, what's your place in all this too?
Right.
So R. Kelly isn't the first celebrity or man to have these issues. You can argue in some instances, what are the women's roles in this? And I know people get all up in arms when men say that. And I'm not talking about a 15-year-old girl who didn't know that there are certain times. It doesn't, and let me say this, I'm not suggesting that it makes everything all right by means of what was done. I'm not suggesting that. No is no. I've got a daughter, so I get all of that. I also have tried to tell my daughter and other folks that I've helped raise, be careful the position you put yourself in.
That's right.
And sometimes when you see something the first time and you keep going back and keep going back, I'm not saying it was right what happened.
Right.
But I'm saying that you could have done something differently that wouldn't have put yourself in that position.
Absolutely.
So I think, R. Kelly, who I got to know over the years, Bill Cosby, who I got to know over the years, and who was very kind to me over the years. It is also just sad for particularly our community. It's sad for the world in that you get talent lost. That becomes minimal when you talk about the atrocities that they are alleged to have done. But no one can talk about the talent that both of those men had. And it has sullied their reputation and, quite frankly, hurt our community in that those are two pillars of talent. And in Mr. Cosby's case, for many, many society that we lost.
Okay. One more question. Well, two more. Jussie Smollett, what did you think about that whole situation? And what do you even think now that he still claims to be innocent?
So unlike Mr. Cosby's case and R. Kelly's case, the preponderance of evidence is not quite the same. Just the sheer volume of it isn't quite the same. Jussie's another guy that I got to know over the years who was always very kind to me, very sweet to my daughter. So I was heartbroken to hear the first report and concerned that had happened to him, even though it didn't quite add up even from day one. But certainly now, I'm just saddened for him whether it be that he is innocent and that the events happen to him, or that he is so lost that he believes in his mind or is lying about these incidents. Either way, it is sad. And I just hope at the end of the day, um, some good can come of it for him, whether it's down the road. I hope that he finds help and solace, you know, in some way, shape, or form.
He's so talented, and such a shame. I think that in time, if he was willing to come back and say, yeah, I did this, it was wrong, I'm sorry, we are the most forgiving community on the planet. So I think that we would welcome him back. I just think it may be a tough road for him, but he's such a talent that I think that he's so young. We would miss so much if he wasn't able to come back and work again.
Well, I think we've got to be careful. We say that often with talented people, as if he weren't talented, we wouldn't quite worry as much. I just hope either way he finds help.
I agree. Last but not least, and we touched on it earlier, the slap heard around the world. So what did you think when you saw it? Were you just as shocked as the rest of us?
Yeah. I mean, initially I thought like everybody else, oh, Will's acting stupid. This will be funny.
Yeah.
I wasn't even sure after it whether Chris had pulled away like you do in the movies. And then you certainly, by the time Will yelled out what he yelled out, you knew it was real. Yeah. Listen, I think that Will is hurting. If you read his book as I did, and I know him a little bit, I don't even know him well enough to pretend like I know any insight. Just know him, by virtue of being in the business all these years and interviewing him any number of times. But it's clear that there's some hurt somewhere within him. And again, I would say the same thing I talk about Jussie. I hope he finds, whatever he needs to, correct that hurt or at least address it. I don't know what he and Jada are doing behind closed doors. I don't know if they're both happy with their relationship or unhappy. And it's foolish for us to say, she got him whipped and this, that, and the other. I don't know what the deal is. I don't know what he's doing. Maybe they genuinely have an understanding that other folk can't understand. But whatever the case is, it was clear to me that night that something isn't quite right. And, we used to say we're very forgiving, a very forgiving community. And I think that used to be the case for most people. Nowadays, I don't know how forgiving we are. And we certainly
we love to cancel people. We do.
We certainly aren't forgiving immediately after an event because we can't wait to get on our social media platform. But again, I think that all this ugliness that we seem to revel in is cool and funny until it happens to you. And so I tell people all the time, just remember that part of it, though, and pray that it doesn't happen to you.
Absolutely.
Because it isn't easy to stand in that kind of wind.
Absolutely. Mr. Gordon, thank you so much for coming today. Would you tell us how we can, first of all, you are an author as well. Could you tell us a little bit about your book, where we can buy it, how we can get in touch with you and get on your social media sites?
I did a book a couple of years ago, right before the pandemic. Actually, we released it. It's called Conversations in Black. Each chapter is a different topic. And what I did is I talked to 40 plus leaders, influencers, from politics to entertainment, to social media. And it reads as if we were all having a conversation in one room. And so it runs a gamut between, our existence in the media, talked about the election at that time, et cetera, et cetera. But it's still an interesting read. Some of the things have come to bear, but it's an interesting read to look back and see, what happened. We take some leadership to task and all. So it was my first book and, excited that we got it done. And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Ed L. Gordon. Though I'm not on Twitter much.
Okay. All right. One less Black person on Black Twitter. Okay.
There you go.
Well, thank you so much. I want you to know that, and this was a commitment I had anyway, but I'm promising you that I will always do my best to gather the facts before I even give an opinion, and I will only repeat the facts on this platform.
Well, I will say to you, I appreciate that. One doesn't have to give facts for an opinion, though. You can give your opinion. You can have a dumbass opinion if you want. That's your opinion, right? Anybody can have any opinion they want, but you have to present it as that, right? I mean, listen, I tell people, somebody had a dumb child in class. You know, all these dumb kids in class, somebody has. So dumb is part of the world, right? Part of existence, part of a. So some of the dumb stuff we hear, you just got to accept it as that.
Yes.
It's when we try to cloak it and present it as truth,
right,
that the problem comes. But I appreciate that anything that you're presenting that is not your opinion, you go find some fact behind it.
All right. Well, I'm a firm believer. I don't want to have a dumbass opinion, even though some people might think it is every now and then.
But that's okay too, right? That's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
If it's an opinion, some people are going to go with it.
Yeah.
And some people are going to think it's stupid. Yeah. And that's okay, because that's what opinions are. But I just say, just stick with it then. But just present it as that. Because I have said dumb shit in my life. Believe that.
Have you ever said anything on air crazy?
I'm sure, but I didn't present it as fact.
Good. Okay, gotcha.
All right,
Thank you, Mr. Gordon. I appreciate you so much for coming on the show. Thank you. All right. Have a good one. All right, everybody. So we've had a wonderful, wonderful interview with Mr. Ed Gordon. What you guys think? Let me come over here and check up on my folks from Facebook and LinkedIn. I'm sorry, guys. I was enthralled. How about that? Actually, before, while I'm pulling that up, let me run one more little commercial. You guys, if you have any show ideas or even people you'd like to see on the platform, please contact me. Let me know, and you can reach me this way. All right, everybody. So who's in the house? You guys, I'm so sorry I didn't really speak to y'all. I just jumped right in. Look, he said he only had 30 minutes, and I was able to get about 50 out of him. And he didn't even flinch. So I had to just jump right in. So with that said, hi, everybody in the chat. And if I miss you, please forgive me. So let me go as far up as I can. Hey, Penny F, Real Master, Peaches M is here. Hi, Valerie. Hi, Little Juan, Nefertiti. Hey, Lashane Wiley. How are you? Onyx Blue, Apple. Let's see, who else? CCNTV. Hey, Apple. I saw Peace Love, Sarkonos, Really BTV, M on the third, Black Brooklyn Star. Hi, guys. Miss D, everybody. I saw you guys cheering me on and cheering him on along the way. Hey, Know Your Own Worth. How are you? Some things to say. December Baby is here. Chipper the Air. Hey, Huggy Pacino. Fresh Press Juice even came in the house. Binge Thinker is here. Let's see. Corinne Aquas Clara. Is that it? Corinne Aqua Clara. Hi. Well, hey, her daughter. Thank you, her daughter. She says she loved the interview. Thank you. Hey, I can't take credit for it. He's just wonderful. It's easy to have a conversation with wonderful people. And we got more coming, y'all. More coming. I'm still playing catch up on the schedule, but I've gotten a lot of great commitments. And so to the people over on Facebook, how are you? Smooches to all of you. Let's see. We had Khadijah, Fayshawn, Eileen, Herb, Scott, Marcel. Hi, everybody. And then we even have folks over on LinkedIn as well. So with that said, hey, tell truth. I love that. Tell the truth. Let's see. The interview was extremely well structured. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you. I'm so happy. Thank you so much. All right. Oh, hey, Natural LP. Hi, Boo Boo. I didn't think you was gonna make it, honeys. And Fedora couldn't make it. Hey, Steph. Who else did I miss? Did I miss anybody? I don't want to miss anybody. Hey, Queen. Uh-oh. Ooh, I'm scrolling too fast. Queen Lady T. Hey, Shell Loves. Thank you, baby doll. Thank you, sweetie. Miss D. You cheered me on before, what, a day ago when I first scheduled it. You were like, oh, this is going to be great. So thank you, Miss D. But Sarkono's doing the opening act in the chat. You know how she is. Just one and only. Hey, Penny. Did I say hi to you? Oh my gosh. Okay, so what points? Anything stood out to you? Did you guys learn anything? That was a great conversation. I feel very fortunate to have had that conversation. God is good. Oh, hey, Stacy Shelby. Someone else I'm going to have on here is my bestie. Hey, girl. So she came too. All right, guys. So anywho, I am excited about this. I hope that the rest of you enjoy a wonderful afternoon. This is Wednesday. It's hump day. So hopefully this gets us over our hump as we head into the weekend. I had a great conversation. I learned some good points and to hear his perspective. You know what? To be honest, hey, Ronnie Q, I thought honestly that he was probably going to be a little more tough on bloggers and that his opinion would be a little different about, journalism versus blogging and that sort of thing. But I think we all agree that everything seems to be blurring. Hey, Black Swan. Black Swan was cheering me on too. So I really found that to be interesting. So it just goes to show that, I think social media and the pandemic both sort of even the playing field for a lot of people where everything is concerned. Business in general, entertainment, news, how we get it, how we share our thoughts and opinions, all of that stuff. Sarkonas, what you say? You were on your best. Hey, Miss All That. She's here too. Let me go back. Hey, Coupon Therapy girl. I didn't see you, boo-boo. Miss All That's a great show. Your channel will garner support and success. Interview questions were on point. Thank you very much, Miss All That. Thank you, mamas. What did Sarkona say? She was on her best behavior. Y'all, is that true? Sarkona, you're a whole comedian. I don't mind if you are entertaining the chat. That's how you do. But everybody, so if you were watching on the other platforms such as LinkedIn and Facebook, I really do encourage you to come, subscribe, join us over here on YouTube because this is where the party really happens. And we have a lot of fun over here, okay? But I want to thank everybody for joining me today. I'm going to sign off. I may come back later just to get like your recap, but let me get out these clothes, have something to eat. I was going to say have something to drink, but I'm not going to do that. I think I'll just have something to eat, take a moment, and then maybe I'll come back out here. And if you guys want to, give me your opinions and tell me how we can do more of the same or make this an even better experience than we have already. Okay. So with that said, I want to thank you guys for supporting me. Thank you to Mr. Ed Gordon. Thank you to my beautiful moderators who I don't even think I have moderators today, but you guys were so sweet and good. You were trying to be nice for the company, huh? You're trying to be very well behaved for the company, and I appreciate it. All right. So with that said, I hope that you guys have a great rest of your afternoon, and I'll see you, in a bit. Smooches.